Thank you. That was pretty long. All right, so, I got an email a little while ago asking me to do this, and my first thought was, why me? I've never done something like this before. I'm just a dentist from Shiawassee County. I've been there for 20 years. At first it was just something that kind of took me aback. And then I started to reflect on it, and that kind of shock turned to flattery. I was just very flattered that one of your teachers would think that I would have something to offer to you guys today. So just give me a second to get my iPad going. It's got my notes. I'm not really a scripted speech reader, so bear with me. I'll try to stay as short as I can, but I can't guarantee anything. So first of all, congratulations to you guys. I know that you guys have had a long path, and a different path, an alternative path is what I've heard today, compared to what people would consider to be normal. Now, that makes me come to that word normal. What's normal? Normal, I think, is a fictitious thing. Normal is something that is arbitrary. Your path is unique. Your path is yours. Your path is awesome because it's yours, and there should be just joy taken in the fact that you guys have made it this far. Now, when it comes to adversity, I have gone through a lot of adversity in my life. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Karachi, Pakistan in 1969. My parents were born in India back in 1941 and 42. And in 1947, there was if you go through history, there was a separation that happened between India and Pakistan. And there was a lot of persecution of Muslims. And they were all forced to leave their homes. We lived in an area that was called Jaipur. And Jaipur is in northern central India, and my grandmother was forced to leave her home. She had a farm, she had a house, she had to forgive everything and leave and go to a new country and start from scratch. Now the problem with her situation was that she was a widow. She had 2 children, and in an Indian culture without a man in her life, it was a very difficult existence. She ended up moving to Karachi, and they gave her a piece of land and told her, you have to build a house. And so my poor grandmother, she ended up building a house by hand. She took adobe material, and little by little layered it up and built this house for herself. And from her is one of the lessons that I've learned in my life is perseverance. So after that, my uncle ended up moving to Canada, and he decided that slowly he was going to bring his whole family over because he saw what our condition was. We were very poor in Pakistan. We did not have very much. And so he saw opportunity in Canada. So what he ended up doing was slowly, one by one, brought all of his siblings over, and he paid for my plane ticket when I was 23 months old to go to Toronto. I've often thought about that moment. That's one of those moments in my life that changed me. It changed who I was. If I had stayed in Pakistan, what would my life have been like? And the influence that he had on me and the change that it brought to my life and the effect that it had is immeasurable. The trajectory of my life completely changed after that point. Now, growing up in Toronto, as a young Pakistani person, my family was new. My father spoke with an accent. He had qualifications in Pakistan, but he came to a foreign country and he was prejudiced against all the time because of the color of his skin, because of his accent. Whenever he would go to work, they would put him in a manual labor job. And so the only path that he saw out of that was education. So he decided he was going to drive a taxi at night, the typical, stereotypical Indian taxi driver at night, but he was going to college during the day. And when he was going to college, he was trying to make it so that he could have a better life for his family. Now, when I was young, I didn't realize we were poor, because to me, that was what I thought was normal. Normal was what I was accustomed to. My life looking back, was very hard. You know, there was, you have a Western culture, you know, and an Eastern family. It was just there was a lot of conflicts and a lot of things to learn. Now, as a child, I suffered a lot of bullying. You know, I was a skinny little guy. I would walk home from school, and there was this kid, his name was Scott Morrison, and every day he would just beat the crap out of me, just every day. And I never told anybody. And it affected who I was. And I didn't, you know, back then bullying was not a thing. You know, that was not something that people talked about back then. You know, and I grew up in a project type of situation in Toronto, you know, from in my elementary school years, and there was a lot of crime. I saw a lot of things that I don't think my children will see today. But with that, you know, the morality that I grew up with was a little different than the way I am now. Now, the thing that changed for me was when I got to your age, I didn't really know who I was. You know, what's my purpose? What am I doing here? What am I gonna do? You know, and what happened was I met somebody that was one of the most influential people in my life, and that's my wife, Laura. She was somebody that I met that taught me how to be good, how to care about people, how to take care of things. You know, if I used to try to, you know, talk her into doing things that I thought, you know, let's do this, and, you know, try to, you know, take something from somebody that was not appropriate, and she would refuse to do anything that just wasn't right. And that morality I learned from her. Now, I think about, when I reflect back, and you guys have been through a lot. I know from what your teachers have told me, you guys have dealt with a lot of adverse situations. You know, I think about my life, and I look back, and you know, sometimes you live with kind of like a regret. I wish things had been different. You know, and that's common for people to say that. They just want to be different. They wish that, you know, I wish I had grown up with more money. I wish I had grown up with, you know, different scenario. But if that had been true, I would not be who I am today. All of those experiences, all those things that happen along the journey are what define you and make you who you are. Now, one of the things that they mentioned in my intro was that I have special needs children. I have 2 children, 17 and 10 years old, that have autism. You know, and that's one of those things where I've had parents say to me, you know, do you wish that Sarah didn't have autism? And there was a time where I was angry about it, and I thought, yes, I wish it had been different. But after 17 years, I love her just the way she is. You know, she has taught me more than I could ever teach her, you know, and that has just been a blessing in my life. Special needs children teach unconditional love, they teach compassion, they teach joy, they teach what it's like to be vulnerable and to have people advocate for you. And I have learned so much. Now, the other thing about my father, when I was your age, he used to say, he had this one mantra that he said to me all through elementary, like school and college. He used to say, you can work now and play later, or you can play now or work later. And what he meant by that was, he was trying to let me realize that I was at a crossroads in my life. This is a point where, you know, the next 5 years are gonna set up the rest of my life. You know, I can go to college, you know, try to better myself and become something and try to lift myself up out of the situation that we were in. That was one of the best bits of advice that I'd ever gotten. You know, he said, if you play now and you screw around and you don't pay attention to things, then you're gonna live your life working hard, paycheck to paycheck, and striving just to make things go. You know, and so one of the things that you're gonna run across when you're going on this journey that you're about to start is that you're gonna have times where things are uncomfortable. And, you know, one of the things that I feel like our society nowadays is trying to avoid is being uncomfortable. I mean, you guys, you know, a lot of times I'll see people and they'll complain about, you know, my teacher was a jerk, you know, because he was trying to trick me on this test. You know, meanwhile, it was, you know, you didn't put the time in, you know, and it was uncomfortable for you to do what you wanted to do. You know, things are gonna be uncomfortable, you know, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a job, And it's that adversity that defines who you are and how you deal with it. So when you come across adversities, which you will, you have to handle it in the best way possible. Good times are always easy. You know, if you are winning, you know, a ball game, it's easy. If you are making lots of money, it's easy. It's when, you know, you have an illness, or you lose your job, or you fail a test, or anything like that, that you know, how you persevere through that makes a difference. Now, another thing that I've been concerned about with kids nowadays, again, is the whole tech thing. You know, you guys will snap and chat and tweet and everything. And one of the things that you have to try to realize is that relationships are very important. You know, relationships with people. You know, you'll have a virtual life and you'll have a real life. And the virtual life has to be separated and realized for being what it is. Because ultimately, reality is where you have to reside. You have to make friends, you have to love people, you have to take care of people, and relationships are where the differences are going to be made. Communication is one of the most important hallmarks of building relationships. So if you have a breakdown in communication, that's where you're going to have problems. I mean, I'm a tech person myself. I love technology. I have a Facebook page, I have everything, but I like to use tech to my advantage. You know, technology can be very good. And just be careful and mindful of, you know, you probably had these social media awareness conversations about what you tweet and what you snap, and it's forever, you know, and a lot of people don't realize that that can be a problem. So the other thing that's going to be important is community. I mean, you guys look like you have a good support community. I see a lot of people out here that are supporting you guys. Now, it's important for your community to have a community to support you to be successful, you know, and that means surrounding yourself with good people, people that follow the same types of goals and aspirations that you have, and drown out the negativity. There's a lot of negativity out there, and sometimes that can take over, and it's very important to try to stay positive. And anybody can tell you that you just cannot do everything alone. Now, as I've gotten older, you know, and I've fortunately been very successful. I mean, I went to dental school in Kentucky, and I ended up coming to Owasso and setting up a little practice. And as I got older and I reached levels of success, which were things that I thought I wanted, I didn't find that I was getting the happiness that I was thinking that I would get from that. The things that make me happiest now are helping people, giving back, you know, whether it's raising money for charities or doing the mission work in Jamaica. You know, having empathy and compassion and feeling love for people is what makes you happy. Now, you know, a lot of times people will talk about happiness, and happiness is not about money. You know, there's different kinds of currencies that are traded all the time. There's emotional currency, you know, it's caring, you know, and feeling cared for. I have, you know, the most important thing to people most of the time is if you feel like you were cared about, you know, whether it was your mom, your dad, your teacher, your boss, your children. If somebody doesn't feel like they care about you, that can be very painful. And I can tell you from my own experience that the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency that there is. Now, I am an immigrant. Obviously, I came from Canada and Pakistan, and one of the things that I love is this country. I feel like we live in the best country in the world. I feel like that I am proof of that. You know, where else could a boy born in the slums of Pakistan grow up and have a successful life and give back through coaching, you know, advocacy for autism, doing the mission work, all of those things. These are all things that have given me tremendous opportunity to make it the impact that I've had. Now, another thing I want to talk about is just having good character. You know, you have to be trustworthy. You know, when you lose trust, you know, it's a hard thing to earn back. You have to be true to your word, be honest. Integrity is what matters. What would you do if nobody's looking? Would you do the right thing? Also, acceptance of other people, people that are different than you. You know, not being prejudiced, respecting people for who they are, being humble, but not arrogant. Now, how do you get there? I think one of your teachers touched on it. You have to set goals. If you don't have goals, you're going to go aimless through life. You will have no rudder. You know, you have to have short-term goals, you have to have medium goals, you have to have vision of where you want to be, and you also want to reach for a higher position. If you think you can be up here, you should try to reach higher. Try to be the best that you can be. Surround yourself with good people, educate yourself, and get good mentors. You're entering a transition period in your life, and you're still trying to develop who yourself is, and you're trying to determine who you are and why you are here. Embrace this time. It can be magical and transformative, and do not live in fear. Fear is going to be a player in your life. You get to decide how much. You can spend your whole life imagining ghosts, worrying about your path to the future, but the only thing that you need to worry about is what's happening in the here and now, in the moment, and your decisions are going to be based on either love or fear. Try to live in what I call a date-type compartment. Only worry about what is in front of you today. Now you can, Jim Carrey had a famous quote, and he said, "You can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on what you love." So the message that I'd like to leave to you is just to listen to people. Listen because it makes them feel like you care. Learn about everything. I'm talking about academically, about people, everything. Love, because love is how you show people that you care. Laugh, and then most of all, live your life. Now go forward and find yourself along this journey and leave the world with an indelible mark that you can be proud of, and congratulations.